At the grueling graduation ceremony for the Marine Corps' elite snipers, a quiet female veteran sits in her wheelchair. Two elite instructors mock the strange gunmetal phoenix emblem on her cap. They have no idea it's the mark of a legendary shot that saved an entire unit. Until the four-star general, the ceremony's guest of honor, reveals that very same shot saved his own life. The entire stadium falls silent. What debt of honor could possibly connect them? A pause before we continue. Tell us, where in the world are you watching? Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next story. The late September sun was relentless over Camp Pendleton, California, baking the rolling hills to a golden brown and making the air shimmer above the asphalt parade ground. The scent of dry sagebrush and dust mingled with the faint, sharp tang of cordite drifting from a distant firing range. It was a smell of home, or what used to be home. Anya Vance, 36, maneuvered her sleek black wheelchair with the practiced efficiency of a soldier handling a weapon. The defined muscles in her shoulders and arms, visible beneath a simple gray t-shirt, spoke of years of disciplined training and the more recent, relentless effort of self-propulsion. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe, practical bun, revealing a strong jawline and a face that held its emotions in check, a stark contrast to her eyes. They were the color of a stormy sea, sharp and perpetually scanning. The eyes of a sniper who missed nothing. Beside her, trotting with a slight, almost imperceptible limp in his left hind leg, was Rocco. At 10 years old, the German Shepherd was a veteran in his own right. His muzzle was grizzled with gray, and a thin white scar cut through the black fur above his right eye. But his posture was still alert, his ears pricked forward, constantly monitoring their surroundings. He was more than a service dog. He was the last surviving member of her team, a silent witness to the life that had been stolen from them both. Anya found a discreet spot under the shade of a lone oak tree, far from the clusters of proud families and ramrod-straight Marines. She was not here for the pomp and circumstance, not for the memories of her own graduation from this very institution, a feat that had made her one of the first women to ever earn the title of Scout Sniper. She was here for a promise. Among the young men graduating today was Corporal Finn Riley, a boy with his father's determined eyes. Finn's father, Gunnery Sergeant Mark Riley, had been her spotter, her partner, her best friend. He had died in the same blast that had confined her to this chair, and in his last coherent moments, she had sworn she would watch over his son. But being here was a form of self-inflicted torture. Watching these young warriors, their bodies unbroken and their futures stretching before them, was a brutal reminder of everything she had lost. A phantom ache, sharp as broken glass, shot through her left leg, a limb that hadn't existed for 8 years. She felt like a ghost haunting her own past, trapped between a life she could no longer live and a future she couldn't yet imagine. Two instructors, their desert Marpat uniforms crisp and their movements precise, stood nearby, observing the proceedings. The taller of the two was Sergeant Kyle Jensen, known as Apex for his almost supernatural marksmanship and the arrogant swagger that came with it. He was broad-shouldered with a classic chiseled military haircut, his face a mask of stern professionalism that barely concealed a dismissive smirk. His partner, Corporal Ben Carter, was younger, wiry, with a nervous energy that suggested he was still trying to live up to the formidable reputation of his superior. Carter's eyes darted around, eager to learn and to please. Jensen's gaze fell upon Anya, lingering for a moment on the unique emblem embroidered on her olive-drab cap. A phoenix, its wings intricately formed from two interlocking sniper rifles, rendered in gunmetal gray thread. "Look at that hat," Jensen murmured to Carter, his voice low but carrying in the still air. "A true sniper lives in the shadows, becomes a ghost. We don't advertise with flashy logos. That's for the grunts who need to shout about who they are." Carter glanced over, his expression uncertain. "She's in a wheelchair, Sergeant. Maybe she earned it." Jensen let out a short, derisive huff. "Earning the right to be a sniper means earning the right to be humble, to be unseen. That hat is an oxymoron. It's an insult to the philosophy of our craft." The words, though not shouted, struck Anya with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just a personal insult, it was a professional one, a dismissal of the very creed she had lived and bled for. She said nothing, her stoic mask firmly in place, and calmly placed a hand on Rocco's head as a low growl rumbled in his chest. But inside, the ghost she felt herself to be shivered, feeling more transparent and more painfully visible than ever before. The ceremony began with the rigid precision expected of the Marine Corps. The head instructor, a grizzled master gunnery sergeant with a chest full of ribbons and a voice like gravel, stepped to the podium. He was a legend in the sniper community, a man who had trained generations of hogs, hunters of gunmen. He spoke of legacy, of the quiet professionalism that defined their small, lethal brotherhood. Anya barely heard him. Her focus was pulled away by a sound that, to most, was just background noise, but to her was a language. From a live fire range nestled in the hills miles away, a sharp, singular crack echoed through the stadium. It wasn't the blunt roar of a standard M4 rifle, but the distinct, whip-like report of a high-velocity round from a precision rifle breaking the sound barrier. That single sound was a key, unlocking a door in her mind she had fought for 8 years to keep bolted shut. The manicured green field of Camp Pendleton dissolved, replaced by the jagged, unforgiving terrain of the Hindu Kush Mountains in Afghanistan. The California sun vanished, and she was once again shivering in the thin, cold air of high altitude. She was 28 again, lying prone on a rocky outcrop, the metal of her M40A5 rifle cold against her cheek. Beside her, Gunnery Sergeant Mark Riley, a man whose calm demeanor was as legendary as his skill with a spotting scope, lay just as still. He was a decade older than her, with laugh lines around his eyes that belied the intense focus he possessed in the field. They were Phoenix 1, the overwatch for an assault team designated Hammer 1, led by a hard-charging captain named Elias Thorne. Their mission was to extract a high-value target from a fortified compound in a valley below. Everything had gone wrong. The intel was bad. The assault team walked into a perfectly executed ambush. The radio crackled with panicked shouts and the chaos of a firefight. "Hammer 1 is pinned! We're taking heavy fire from the ridgeline. Commander is hit!" Anya peered through her scope, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She could see them, small figures in the distance, trapped in a kill zone. Captain Thorne was slumped against a crumbling wall, one arm hanging uselessly as he tried to return fire with his sidearm. Enemy fighters were closing in, moving with the confidence of predators about to secure their prey. "I don't have a clean shot, Mark," she hissed, frustration and adrenaline making her voice tight. A vicious crosswind was whipping through the valley, unpredictable and treacherous. "The target is over 1,400 meters out, and that wind, it's impossible." Mark didn't flinch, his voice calm and steady, cut through her panic. "Nothing's impossible for you, Anya. Listen to me. The wind is gusting to 15 miles per hour from your 3 o'clock. Hold 2 mils left, 1.5 up. Feel the lull. It'll be there for a second. Trust the fundamentals. Trust yourself." He was her anchor, the steadying force that allowed her to perform miracles. Anya took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing her body into stillness. She let her training take over, her mind a cold calculator of distance, windage, and bullet drop. She saw him then, through the shimmering heat haze. The enemy commander, a man with a long beard, stepping out from behind cover to direct the final assault. It was now or never. She found the lull Mark had predicted, a momentary pause in the wind's assault. She exhaled, her finger tightening on the trigger. The world narrowed to the man in her crosshairs. She squeezed. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. For a heart-stopping second, she lost sight of the target in the recoil. When her scope settled, the commander was gone. Chaos erupted among the enemy fighters below. The linchpin of their attack had been removed. That momentary confusion was all Hammer 1 needed. They rallied, pushed back, and the sound of inbound medevac helicopters soon filled the air. "Bullseye!" Mark breathed, a rare grin spreading across his face. But their celebration was cut short. As they packed their gear to displace, the enemy, enraged and seeking vengeance, had flanked their position. On their frantic egress, their vehicle struck a pressure plate IED. The world erupted in a cataclysm of fire, noise, and blinding pain. The last thing Anya remembered was Mark's body instinctively shielding her as the vehicle was torn apart. The sharp report of the master gunnery sergeant's gavel, bringing a section of the ceremony to a close, jolted Anya back to the present. Her hand was gripping the armrest of her wheelchair so tightly her knuckles were white. The scent of sagebrush was once again in the air, but she could still taste the metallic tang of blood and cordite on her tongue. The echo of that single, life-saving shot still rang in her ears, forever intertwined with the deafening roar of the explosion that followed. As the last graduate's name was called, the guest of honor was introduced, General Elias Thorne, the Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. At 50, Thorne was the epitome of a modern general, lean, sharp, with intelligent eyes that seemed to absorb everything. He moved with an athlete's grace, his prosthetic left arm, forged from carbon fiber and polished steel, a subtle yet powerful statement of a warrior who had paid his dues. There was a quiet intensity about him, a stark contrast to the boisterous generals of old. He approached the podium not with arrogance, but with the solemn weight of command. A hush fell over the stadium. Sergeant Jensen and Corporal Carter stood a little straighter, their faces filled with awe for the man who was a living legend. "Graduates, families, instructors," Thorne began, his voice calm but resonant, carrying effortlessly to the furthest seats. "It's tradition for a general to stand here and speak of the future, of the challenges you will face, of the honor you will bring to our Corps. But today, I'm going to break with tradition. I'm going to talk about the past. Specifically, about a day 8 years ago when my life should have ended. The friendly chatter in the crowd died instantly. An unnerving silence took its place. This was not the standard congratulatory speech. In a valley in Helmand province, my team was betrayed," Thorne continued, his eyes scanning the crowd, yet seemingly looking through them into a memory. "We were surrounded, outnumbered, and I was wounded. My radio was dead. My men were falling. I had made my peace with God and was preparing to sell my life as dearly as possible." He paused, letting the grim reality of his words sink in. And then, from a place I couldn't see, from a distance I couldn't comprehend, salvation came in the form of a single rifle shot. A bullet, fired from nearly a mile away through a treacherous wind, struck and killed the enemy commander who was orchestrating our slaughter. It was a shot that defied physics, a shot that defied logic. It was a miracle. His gaze swept across the field, and then, with unerring accuracy, it locked onto Anya's. That miracle was performed by a ghost on a ridgeline, a sniper from a unit so secret its name does not appear in any official record, a unit known only as Project Chimera. Every head turned, following his gaze, a wave of murmurs rippling through the stands. In the graduates section, Finn Riley stared at Anya, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning comprehension. Jensen and Carter exchanged a panicked look, the color draining from their faces. "That ghost," Thorne's voice rose with emotion, "is with us today. Her name is then Captain Anya Vance." He reached under the podium and produced his own worn olive-drab cap, identical to hers. He held it up for all to see the gunmetal phoenix. "This emblem," he declared, his voice thick with a gratitude that transcended rank, "is not for show. It is not for pride. It is a reminder. For me, it is a reminder of a debt of honor that I can never fully repay. A debt for my life." Then, he did something that would be spoken about at Camp Pendleton for years to come. General Thorne stepped down from the podium. He walked directly to Anya's wheelchair, ignoring the sea of saluting officers in his path. He stopped before her, drew himself to his full height, and executed the slowest, most deliberate, and most respectful salute she had ever seen. It wasn't the salute of a general to a subordinate. It was the salute of a soldier to his savior. As if triggered by an invisible command, the entire stadium rose as one. The sharp crack of 2,000 pairs of heels clicking together echoed like a single thunderclap. Every Marine, from the newest graduate to the grizzled instructors, snapped a salute. Civilians placed their hands over their hearts. Jensen and Carter stood ramrod straight, their arms locked in a salute, their faces pale with the sickening weight of their own ignorance and disrespect. They were saluting the quiet, broken woman they had mocked, the ghost who had saved the life of the very general they revered. For Anya, the moment was overwhelming. The wall she had built around her heart, brick by painful brick over 8 years, crumbled into dust. Hearing the story from his perspective, witnessing his public declaration of debt, was more than validation. It was absolution. When she saw Finn Riley saluting her, tears streaming freely down his young face, she knew she had fulfilled her promise to his father. She hadn't just watched over his son. She had shown him, in the most powerful way imaginable, the true meaning of the sacrifice his father had made. In that thunderous, reverent silence, Anya Vance was no longer a ghost. She was the anchor of a legacy, the quiet center of a storm of honor. The crushing weight on her soul finally lifted. The thunderous salute eventually subsided, replaced by a charged, respectful silence as the crowd began to disperse. The formal ceremony was over, but the real one had just concluded. As people moved towards the exits, a small, distinct group remained. Sergeant Jensen and Corporal Carter approached Anya, their movements hesitant, stripped of all previous arrogance. They stopped a respectful distance away, as if approaching a sacred monument. It was Jensen who spoke, his voice, once sharp with mockery, now low and strained with humility. "Captain," he began, correcting the rank from his previous thoughts, "there are no words. What I said, what I thought, was born from an ignorance I didn't even know I had. It was poison. An apology feels insultingly small for what we did, but it's all we have. I am sorry. Please tell us how we can begin to earn the right to wear the same uniform as you." Carter stood beside him, his head bowed, nodding in silent, shame-faced agreement. Anya looked at them, these two young, hard men, now utterly broken by the truth. She saw not the arrogant instructors from an hour ago, but two Marines who had just learned the most brutal and necessary lesson of their careers. "In Chimera," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "a mistake could get your whole team killed. You learn from it in seconds, or you die. You have the luxury of time. Use it. Let your actions be the apology." Before they could respond, a young corporal with a freshly shaven head and familiar, determined eyes rushed forward. It was Finn Riley. He didn't hesitate, dropping to one knee beside her wheelchair and wrapping his arms around her in a fierce, trembling hug. "Aunt Anya," he choked out, using the childhood name he'd always had for her. "I never knew. My whole life, I've heard stories about my dad being a hero. But today I saw his legacy. You didn't just save the general. You saved a piece of my father. Thank you for being here." Rocco, sensing the raw emotion of the moment, nudged Finn's hand with his wet nose, a gesture of quiet comfort. Anya returned the hug, her own eyes finally stinging with unshed tears. This was the reason she had come. This connection, this passing of the torch from a fallen father to a rising son, was the promise fulfilled. The internal war she had been fighting for years finally declared a ceasefire. When Finn stepped back, General Thorne was there. He had waited, allowing the personal moments to unfold. "He's a good man, just like his father," Thorne said softly, his gaze filled with a paternal warmth. He then turned his full attention to Anya. "My speech was just words, Anya. A public acknowledgement of a private debt. It's not enough. I'm building a new advanced module for the Scout Sniper course, something that goes beyond wind calls and camouflage. It's a program focused on psychological resilience, on decision-making when you're compromised, alone, and the world is counting on you. We're calling it the Chimera Initiative." He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping with intensity. "I don't want an instructor who can just read from a manual. I need a mentor who has lived it. I need someone who has been to the edge and come back. I need you." The offer hung in the air. More than a job, it was a calling. It was a path back. Anya looked at the earnest faces of Jensen and Carter, hungry for redemption. She looked at Finn, his eyes shining with pride for a history he now understood. She looked at Thorne, the man whose life she'd saved, who was now offering to save hers. She realized her value wasn't confined to the past, locked away in a broken body. Her scars, both visible and invisible, were not weaknesses. They were a roadmap. They were the curriculum. The ghost on the ridge had a new mission. She met the general's gaze, her own eyes clear and steady for the first time in years. "I won't be a mentor, Elias," she said, a quiet strength returning to her voice. "I will help you build it, as a partner. A rare, genuine smile broke across General Thorne's face. "I would expect nothing less, Captain." As she turned her wheelchair and began to head for the exit, with Rocco trotting faithfully by her side, the sun-baked hills of Camp Pendleton no longer seemed like a graveyard of memories. They were a landscape of promise, a silent testament to the fact that her war was not over. It had simply changed terrain. Sometimes a miracle isn't a flash of lightning from a clear sky. More often, it is a quiet act of providence, a single perfectly timed event that changes everything. For General Thorne, the miracle was an impossible rifle shot from a ghost on a ridge, a shot that saved his life when all hope was lost. For Anya, the miracle was different. It was the rediscovery of purpose in the ashes of her old life, a healing that began not with the mending of her body, but with a moment of honor and grace that mended her spirit. In our own lives, we often look for grand, undeniable signs from God, and in doing so, we can miss the quiet miracles that surround us every day. It might be the unexpected strength to face a difficult challenge, a kind word from a stranger that lifts our spirits, or the simple grace of seeing a new sunrise. Anya's journey reminds us that our deepest scars do not have to define us. They can become the very source of our wisdom and strength. It is often through our trials that God clears a path for a blessing we could never have foreseen. If this story of resilience and unexpected grace touched your heart, we invite you to share it with someone who might need a message of hope. What part of Anya's journey resonated with you the most? We would be honored to read your thoughts in the comments below. And to ensure you never miss another story of quiet courage and faith, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Thank you for spending your time with us. May God bless you and keep you always.